All right. Okay. That is live. And I'm sitting here going, what the heck is happening?
What's going on?
Man, the next real estate boom. Ryan, it's already starting, right? Simple one word answer.
Yes.
Guys, Chris Peshek, I'm a real estate broker just outside of Austin, Texas. That guy over there, Stephen Babcock, mortgage loan originator, just outside of Austin, Texas. That guy down there, this is like Brady Bunch. That guy down there, Ryan Walker, is Ryan. Why don't you tell us what you do? Because all I know is that you deal in liquid natural or natural gas. So why don't you give us a quick rundown after I remind everybody what we do on the show? It's 5 o'clock. It's Monday. We're going to talk about something fun with real estate. And today it is about the next major real estate boom. Boom being something you can potentially get into that would make obscene amounts of money, potentially. But the other thing we do after 5 o'clock is we drink. Mr. Babcock, anything on the tab?
Hey, Stella, my friend.
Ooh, Stella Artois. My friend Ryan, I don't know that you consume alcoholic beverages, do you?
I do not, but I do have a cup here with half and half sweet, unsweet mint tea from HTO right down the street. So
You're getting crazy.
Well,
crazy.
I am not going to let this opportunity pass by without letting everybody know that Ryan grew up in Austin, Texas. So don't hold that against him.
I did.
I am, on the other hand, having a nice glass of whiskey because it was easy and quick to have. So
thought about
now
whiskey
that we've gone there, let's get into this. Ryan, why are you on this show today?
Because you asked me to. So I work as a kind of a financial analyst, asset manager for a natural gas company here in town. Specifically, they do infrastructure projects, particularly natural gas pipelines, typically connecting producers out in West Texas with the consuming area down in the Gulf Coast of Texas.
Gotcha.
So,
Ryan brings the IQ of this room up substantially. I'm just going to point that out. It's like,
It should be everyone's goal, by the way. You become the 5 friends you hang out with, and you should pray all of your friends are smarter than you.
That's right. And Ryan needs to find other rooms to hang out in. I'm just
Yeah. What are you doing, man? It's a mistake. Worst case, we like each other. God.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, jumping into it, the whole reason, I mean, Steve and I were talking last week, and we started talking a little bit about electrical production, and I said, hey, let's we're going to talk about this next week, and I'm going to bring Ryan on board. And what a lot of people don't realize, Steve and I have had this conversation. God, I can't figure out where I am today. Steve and I have had this conversation quite a bit offline. Ryan and I have had this conversation offline, but the big real estate boom that we're going to talk through today are data centers and electrical production. Ryan, do you want to kind of give us a little bit of a precursor into what you're seeing just in your line of work every day, and then we'll jump into this article?
Sure. So, as people are aware, the buzzwords of the day are AI, data centers, things of that nature. And what we see from the energy side is, the demand that is there for power, as you mentioned, and much of that power has been either from the grid or from natural gas generators. Now, it's from the grid, but what is the grid powered by? Well, the grid is powered by a bunch of different resources, but natural gas being a main staple, especially here in Texas. So yep. We see that pretty often. We keep up with fundamentals. We talked about this the last time I was on, and part of that, we do a lot of research on these kinds of topics. And so we are seeing and keeping track of where these developments are going and how that's impacting the fundamental nature of energy. And Ryan, so that's, yeah.
May I interrupt you just real fast? And,
Sure.
and you gave me permission to interrupt you if my eyes were glazing over. Let me be specific. They were not glazing over. Okay. I had a thought. I wanted to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I read I read a headline today. Let's be specific. This is one of those moments I did not read the head or the article. But the headline was that a crypto facility has purchased a windmill facility in Texas to shut it down. Did you read this? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I have not seen the one where they are going to shut it down. However, this makes a lot of sense to me
Yeah,
because
it doesn't to me. So this is okay. Thank you. This is why I interrupted. Please tell me what the hell's going on?
sure. So, going out of, kind of a chronological story event here, but for this particular item, there's a big need for data centers. Data centers want to connect to the grid. That's what they're familiar with. That's what they've always done. That makes the most sense. And so that's what they want to do. Crypto miners, kind of the same thing, because crypto miners can ramp up and down. And so they can shut down if the price signal from the grid gets too large. So in this particular case, my guess, I haven't read the article, but my guess is that they are going to shut down the wind farm because they can make more money doing crypto by utilizing the interconnect. So where that power plant is connecting to the grid, that is extremely valuable.
It's more valuable to them to use it
Oh
on site than to sell it to the
my
market.
God,
Holy
location really
crap.
is ×3. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Now,
Thank you.
I'm going
Interesting.
to, and Ryan, I'm going to let you keep going, but I'm going to start popping a few things up here as you're talking, just so we can get a little bit of a little bit of context with what you're talking about here. So this is another article, and this is out of Virginia. This is a data center study. Power demand will require 150% new generation. So keep going with what you were talking about, electric generation and y'all's studies.
Let me provide a little bit of context here, and because I want to discuss two things real fast. Data centers. What are they and what do they do? Right? Everyone talks about AI and data centers interchangeably. Not necessarily the case, right?
Correct.
So data centers help facilitate compute power. So it is what makes you be able to stream this live. It's what is able for AI whenever you chat, whenever you do something to chat GPT, it's what powers that. It powers your apps. Now, in addition to that, there are large language models as well. And those are kind of a different category and they work differently on the power consumption side. So those are what data centers do. And in order to do that, you have to power them. Something that the Northeast has found out is that if you give an inch, they will take a mile. And so the data centers have gobbled up a lot of these interconnects. They have gobbled up a lot of the capacity. And it is now getting scarce to find these locations that are already connected to the grid. And they're connecting so much that some places in the Northeast, specifically in PJM, like Dominion, they've done a full halt. They said, no more until we get our act together and we make sure that the lights won't go out during the winter, right? And so that's a big issue. So this revolution is coming, and it's not just a data revolution. It has to do with how we live. It has to do with how we power things. It has to do with how the grid is connected. It has to do with energy density, and it has to do with the combination of like regulatory and efficiencies, because this is snowballing. This is happening, and everyone is trying to figure out how to do it the best way possible, the fastest way possible, with the least amount of collateral damage to the end consumer, to Joe Schmo at home, who doesn't want his power prices to triple.
Right. I read a headline last week that was talking about how they some city did a study where they reduced the amount of power going to the AI data centers by like 26%, I think it was, and all it did was increase the wait time by 4 seconds for an LLM. And so they're trying to figure out, like, okay, is that an acceptable wait time for the amount of compute power, right? And for the amount of power you save. The other thing, I'm a gamer, so I have some idea of compute power, above other people, right? But not much. I'm not a programmer or anything like that, right? Or hardware designer or something. But there's this little gaming handheld that I use called the ROG Ally. It is the only way I can play games anymore because I have kids and I have to look after them, and it's just no way. Anyway, it's really nerdy, right? But point is, this thing is like a full size gaming computer. It's not top of the line or anything, but it plays almost all games. And what I've read, it lasts for like 40 minutes. Okay, great. Well, the new one lasts for like 3 hours. So they've solved that issue. What I've also read, though, is that the next version will use a processing unit that uses like 3 watts of power, but does the same output. And I kept thinking to myself, man, data centers need to install this. And I understand they don't use those processors. They use very, very advanced processors, right? NVIDIA kind of stuff, et cetera. But, you know, do you think that could be a possible solution for I mean, it's probably simplistic, right? But it seemed to me like, man, you just replace all those processors. They use, a tenth the power. We're good to go, right?
So this is something that is happening at lightning speed, right? There are efficiencies going on in all of these submarkets, right? One of them is direct efficiency of compute power and the amount of electricity it takes per GPU, right? Per processing unit, right? And so there's that, and then there's how do you cool it if you start adding more power, right? And that's becoming a bigger issue because everyone's worried about water, and water has begun to be used in these things, whether you're air cooled or you're water cooled. Microsoft just came out today saying that they want a closed loop system so that you don't have any water evaporation, so that you don't have to truck in or pipe in a bunch of water every single day, every single month for whatever price. Now, without going on too many tangents, this issue of water doesn't just pertain to cooling, though. It also pertains to power generation.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that, these natural gas generation units are sometimes used, they have also combined cycle, which attaches a steam turbine, right? Very similar to nukes in a way where you heat a bunch of steam, it turns a turbine, and you get some additional power, right? So you get some heat recovery off your gen units. It runs a steam power. It makes your power plant more efficient. So these data centers are using those. So you're already using a bunch of water there. Now, next level, there is a project that is in process to be built out of Houston that is going to use hydrogen and some fuel cells, which a byproduct of that is water. So they actually make their own water to the point of excess. So they actually make more water than they consume at the data center. At least that's the concept. And it's been proven in their pilot plant out in California. And then they sell that water to the local city. So it solves a water problem as well. Now, that's not the majority of projects. That is very cost intensive, above the normal project. But to give you a sense of how integrated these things are and how kind of Wild West this whole thing is, that's just the flavor of it.
Okay, now I'm going to start to kind of rein us back in just a little bit, because the whole point about this is kind of real estate, but that gives us that's a precursor for what we're going to dive into with real estate. So I'm going to throw up just a quick piece of an article. This is a guy and again, this is in Virginia, project leader. This is a guy that's trying to build out a data center. He's talking about the industry has supported 74,000 jobs on average, including direct jobs building or working in data centers, indirect jobs using to support these workers in sectors like retail, housing. Altogether, industry-related jobs brought in an estimated 5.5 billion in annual labor income. The industry itself added 9.1 billion. During construction, a data center site can employ 1,500 workers. And these things are not built in a day. So we're talking 1,500 workers over the course of a couple of years at least. So we're looking at real estate from the perspective of, for the data centers actual being built, we're looking at it for potentially electric generation near the data centers. We're looking at it for the jobs that the data centers are providing. We're looking at it from the temporary housing that's on site, whether that's, apartment complexes, RV parks, stuff like that. So just in and of itself, when you're looking at, hey, we're going to put up a data center, we're talking about a lot of actual real estate and a lot of money. And they're talking about it a little bit here on the side, indirect jobs. Okay, people have to build housing. People have to build infrastructure. The cities are hiring people. You also have people that now are going to be additional lawn care, maintenance people, all this other stuff. Mark Sprague, Independence Title, always talks about when you have one job created by an industry, call it data centers, Google, Oracle, whatever, that one job brings in 4 additional supplemental jobs into the area. That's one of the reasons that Austin was growing so fast. So just from that perspective, what we're looking at in a real estate sense is a metric buttload of additional real estate opportunity in these areas.
That's right. And to give you a sense of how important this jobs element is, it was just announced that Meta or Facebook is going to build a $10 billion, that's a B, $10 billion data center complex in Louisiana, northern Louisiana. And one of the reasons why it got greenlit was because of the jobs that it would create. And so if you think about this and going back to your point earlier about the wind farm kind of, swap out, right? That's happening. Think about other places in these small towns that have large power interconnects. So where's your old steel mills? Where's your old, large grain facilities? Where's your old paper mills? Where's your old concrete plants that are no longer in use?
Wow.
But that power connection is still there. And so this is happening on a large scale in these small towns, and it's helping revitalize those economies.
Explain to people why you can't just build a new one. Power Connect.
So you can build a new Power Connect. You have to go through the regulatory process of asking the grid to be able to do that. Then the grid has to do a bunch of studies to make sure that you are not the one that is the last megawatt to overload the grid, right? And so what ERCOT in Texas is figuring out from the lessons learned in PJM up in the Northeast is, hey, let's slow this down. Let's make those interconnect requests a little bit longer of a timeline so that we can do more research. In addition to that, recently, the PUCT of Texas required that if you're a crypto mining facility above 75 megawatts, you have to basically provide all of your details to the regulatory agency by February, right? And so that's who owns you, what's your corporate structure, when do you run, do you have backup gen, where exactly are you located, how big is your facility, what's in your facility, can you ramp up and down? So those are the elements when you're talking about connecting to the grid that makes this a little bit more complicated. Remember, the grid was not built to facilitate super large individual users, right? The grid was originally built to facilitate households and then your industrial base, right? Your industrial base, for the most part, over history, has run around the clock, right? So it's like a steady hum of base load. A lot of those facilities have their own generation on site. It makes sense. And now you're throwing a different element into the grid that the grid wasn't technically designed to handle. And so there's a lot of interaction with industry right now. There's actually a pilot going on between different ISOs, independent system operators, so the electric utilities, and then private industry to do a pilot to basically all get the minds all in the same room, put together a data center and power plant, and figure out how the best concept is to connect these to the grid and how they impact the grid.
Ryan.
Yeah.
So Ryan, do you see an influx of nuclear power coming?
We're getting there, Steve. Damn it.
Sorry. This is the risk when you don't tell me the layout. Go ahead. Sorry.
So let me back up real fast and say yes. So on the real estate front, like there are large opportunities happening, and they're happening all over, right? So they're within the cities, they're within the suburbs, and they're in now starting to be in rural America. They're not they are not limited to only Virginia and Texas, right? Virginia and Texas have a large outsized portion of this, but it's all over. It's Louisiana, it's Georgia, it's Ohio, it's Michigan, it's everywhere in between, North Carolina, Tennessee, and so this is having an outsized effect across the board, and it's not in one specific type of area, right? And so what I was talking about earlier was that the data centers that support your applications, right, where frequency and close to market matters, you're going to find those directly outside the cities or in the cities.
I'm going to pop off on that because I was just pulling this up. Because the large industrial size data centers are incompatible in proximity to residential use, according to the report, noise generated from cooling systems, generators, blah, blah, blah. But they found that about a third of operational data center properties in Virginia are within 200 feet of residentially zoned properties. Doesn't mean the data center is 200 feet apart, but they're close by. It doesn't include a number of data centers that are planned or under construction close by the residential areas. Nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah. And the power generators and the infrastructure teams have started to pick up on this. And there are large technological increases that have been made to get your units within the limits of those sound restrictions, right? So sound dampeners, right? Like there's a bunch of different ways to do that. I'm not going to go into details.
Throw up a bunch of walls, man. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. And so you can do all of those things. But people want their data. They don't want, buffering when they're streaming, and they want it now. And that's coming along. And
we all just were watching Yellowstone and it stops. Just saying.
Yeah.
And so you guys know, like we've already gone down the rabbit hole. There's no way we're going to be able to discuss the article that I had pulled up, just from a time perspective. But I'm dropping all of that stuff in the comments in case you want to go into it and read some more on this. Sorry, Ryan, keep going.
No, that's that's all I had on that specific subject.
So Ryan,
yeah,
if I'm wanting to get ahead of all this and try to buy some land near a data center or a future possible data center or a future possible nuke site, what geographic features would I be looking for to take advantage of? Right? Like, how do I find that land before it exists?
Do it! Damn it!
Why don't you just take over, man?
That's fine. You're just like that's the amazing thing about Steve is that like his mind just freaking goes nonstop. My question was going to be, and it's the same question. My question is going to be rural Louisiana. What the hell is in northern Louisiana? Same question he asked, just a different way of asking it. Go.
So that is a $1 billion question. That is not something that's easy to answer. You need land. You actually don't need as much as you would think. You need water, access to water. You need electricity. Now, whether or not that electricity comes from generation on site or whether it comes from the grid is being debated and solved for. But there aren't a lot of prohibitions on where you can put them if you're talking about rural America, right? Most counties will welcome it with open arms because of the jobs, because of the tax revenue, because of all of it, right? And so how do you do it? So fiber is also a key one. And so these data centers need fiber to transmit data from place to place. Fiber is typically run along highways and roadways. So are transmission lines. So there are areas where it would be interesting to prospect, especially if you had a way to offset the cost of owning the land before you made the play, right? So if you have an ag exemption on the land that's within a couple of miles of a interstate, that seems good. You can look at what cities have regulated power versus unregulated power. Again, if I go down this route, there'll be a lot of glazed eyes, but there's no silver bullet. There really isn't. The hard part for data centers and big data and big energy haven't necessarily had to talk each other's language in a long time or ever. And so that process is being started and forced together. And so the hardest part is getting everyone to agree on all of the pieces. Do you have access to the things? Can you do it? Right? Because there's a lot of people right now that it's the wild west on the real estate front, where there's people gobbling up land for the speck of it.
Just on speculation.
And they'll sell the land to developers. They'll try to get an interconnect place on it with nothing. It's just a plot of land. And so then you start talking about the grid. And so the grids here are looking at all of these different interconnection requests, and some of them are super real, and some of them are these people who don't really have an interest and don't really have a data center backing them. They're just out there trying to get a connection to the grid. And so there's some regulatory overhaul with the grid that's currently happening to better analyze and recognize which projects are more sustainable and real, and which ones are more speculative.
It's gonna
Cool.
seem like a little bit of a side comment rabbit hole, but you've mentioned a few things in talking about, having access to transmission lines and all this other stuff. But one of the major reasons that I wanted you to be on here is conversations that you and I have had about there's a lot of very rural land that has zero connectivity that probably would still make a lot of sense for data centers. Can you kind of chat through that a little bit for us? And because Steve asked, okay, what do you look for? Okay, well, there's a lot of land in West Texas that's just literally burning a natural resource to get rid of it. That could make sense. What do you think about that, Ryan?
Yes, that would make a lot of sense. Where you have cheap energy, whether it's grid energy or it's fuel for the generators that you would use to produce your power. Historically, the backup gen for these data centers have been diesel, but given the current environmental priorities of some of the companies, they're looking to get cleaner energy. And out in West Texas, you have a lot of wind, and that's true. And you have solar out there, just like you do in South Texas near Houston, and things like that. And so, like for example, like your crypto, your crypto guy who or the article who's taking over this wind farm and whatnot and using the I assume is using
they're shutting it down. It's unbelievable.
They're shutting it down.
Yeah.
But still, the funny thing about West Texas is the vast majority of that power is renewable, right? So everyone thinks of West Texas and thinks of oil and gas. And I had this thought the other day of we happen to be producing hydrocarbons in the most renewable way possible.
Yeah.
Because literally during the peak of summer, they're curtailing solar because they have too much of it. We have the largest renewable footprint of any state in the nation. It's not California, it's Texas. And so, like, you have wind, you have solar out there, and you have cheap energy. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And you started to see some interest out that way. But those things take time. And what are you connecting to? And whose assets are you connecting to? And how are you going to power your generator? Like, how are you going to power your data center? And that's a big question. And for example, part of Meta and Facebook's deal in Louisiana was that Facebook would offset 100% of the carbon, right? So they have they're going to build a gigawatt plus like 1.5, like 1,500 megawatts
Just please say
of
1.21.
renewable energy in
Yeah.
addition to carbon sequestration. And so one of the other technologies that's really getting pushed through right now is carbon sequestration.
What's that?
Carbon
Thank you.
sequestration is when you put a pipeline on the exhaust of your generator, and you pipe that exhaust, which is mostly particulate matter and CO2, mostly CO2, into either a CO2 system, pipeline system. There's not that many of them, or you inject it underground into, for example, depleted wells or active wells.
Theoretically, you should be able to add the water back to it and make fuel again. Someone needs to work on that, I think. Just saying.
I'm
Just
thinking
saying.
about all
It's
the
easy.
carbon
It'll be
dioxide.
easy.
I'm just
Yeah,
thinking about all the
sure.
carbon dioxide that plants could be using to grow. I don't know.
So that's also an interesting one where the plants give off heat and carbon dioxide, and there are AI facilities that are positioned in colder climates that are doing this because they'll put a greenhouse next to it, like industrial sized greenhouse next to it. And
Pretty cool.
Offset the cost of your land.
And so you'll offset the cost of your land. There's a lot of, how do you jigsaw this? And there's 1,000,001 ways to do it. And there's 1,000,001 people trying to figure it out.
And I'll bet if you put a giant greenhouse next to it, the government would give you some type of subsidy to produce food.
Well, I mean, these data centers produce so much heat.
right.
You can actually use the heat to turn turbines and create energy from the energy you're making. Which, Chris, did you realize that nuclear plants got their energy from steam?
Yes, absolutely.
Dude, when I learned that for the first time, I was like, wait a minute, you mean like a steam engine, like the 1800 steam engine? Yeah, that one. Yeah, exactly.
100%. If people don't know, the whole fission reaction is the whole point of it is to heat water to a point where it creates steam and it turns turbines. Yes, that's how electrical generation occurs.
You think about how far you think we've come compared to the basics that we use today. I don't know.
Well, but that's the next jump off point. And I know this goes, Ryan, this goes kind of beyond where you are, but you and I have had this conversation. Okay, now we're talking about small nuclear reactors, modular nuclear reactors. And if you've got the ability to have a data center in a rural area and bringing in these, and by small nuclear reactors, these things literally can be assembled in a matter of a few weeks. Not counting government oversight and inspections and all of that stuff. But that's a real thing that's about to start coming down the pipeline right now.
Follow the money. Follow the money. And all of your Fortune 500, the top of your Fortune 500 companies have all gotten in line for nuclear technology. Some have partnered with SMR and nukes to take the power off of the nukes. So they do a contract with the nuclear where they don't own the company that's doing it. They're not financing the company, but they're saying, we will pay for your power. And here's a contract to pay for your power once you get greenlit and installed. Recently, those same players have started to directly finance those companies. And so it's not a matter of is it coming? It's a matter of when and which ones are going to be the fastest to market. It's one of the few things. It's also one of the few things that has the most bipartisan support in Congress.
Yep. That's it. We need to reverse engineer the Pyramid of Giza, come up with some broadcasted power, Tesla style. I think.
Well, but
you guys down?
What I was
think I'm down.
say, at this point, you're talking about the SMRs and that small modular reactor, and if you haven't,
those are fun.
Yeah,
those
if you
are cool
haven't researched it, get into it. It's super cool. But they're proven in, like, this is not a concept. This is a proven concept. These things are in production. The EPA is getting behind them. There's
Yeah.
regulatory hurdles to overcome.
They're little suitcase nukes, basically, that you plant in the ground.
Well, it's a little bigger than a suitcase, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
a little bit bigger. But again, it's coming down the pipeline. And this is correct. Like this is these are the best conversations that I have with Ryan, is how all of this stuff starts to dovetail together. Because you've got sites, and I'm going to say it, Ryan. Ryan can't talk too much because he's like this. This is where he works. So I'm going to jump outside of the box a little bit, and I'm going to say, just imagine an area where you have a fuel that can't be used, and there's no connectivity to the area, but you can take that fuel and you can create energy to drive a data center, or you can drive an AI farm. And then you can team with somebody like, I don't know, somebody who's got, thousands of satellites in the air that, takes data and disperses data. This can be done literally anywhere.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be done down here. It should be done in cold areas. We need to do it in a place where you just bring in the cold air and you're done. Otherwise, cooling is a major issue.
It is, but if you're producing your own electricity on site for cooling, does it matter?
Well, no, but then you need water and you need other issues. You know what I mean? It just brings on more issues. We do this in Alaska and set up a few giant, buildings in Alaska. We will never have to worry about cooling again. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just stupid, but that's where I would go.
So two things there, Steve, and this goes to the broader point. Transmission. It's some
Haven't the
absurd
Chinese
number.
figured this out with satellites? They're using light to transmit
Yes.
power. Have you seen this?
Yes.
Boom.
Yes.
Easy. No, I'm kidding. It's never easy. I'm totally joking. Yeah.
But beyond
Touché.
transmission, the hurdles of transmission, which is a big issue. There's a report that came out that we need, I don't know, some ridiculous number of miles of new transmission lines, and it's like in the tens of thousands.
Tell you what, we'll
And-
get it done in like 6 months. We'll just tell Canada that they can take 25% of whatever we're using, as long as they help us with the construction, and they got a deadline and when it has to be done. There you go. Done.
And-
You like my
and-
solutions? I'm
Yes.
fast. This is why you've got the higher IQ than me, but this is, I'm the comic relief, I think. So it's good.
I will say this on that point, though, and Ryan, sorry to cut you off on it again.
No, go ahead.
Going through my mind, you're talking about all this heat generation, and I'm thinking about dropping these massive data centers in the middle of cold climate areas and
Or
running
mountains.
underground piping to heat homes. I'm just,
Or mountains. You could use the underground, cooling, I suppose, whatever that's called, the natural geothermal, right?
geothermal, yeah.
There's a reason why Ireland has been a hub for this for a decade.
Oh, shit, here we go.
Is there swamps everywhere, peat moss and all that?
It's cold.
It's cool climate.
And as long as you have the undersea cables that transport the fiber, or you have the satellites, you're good. You're good.
As long as nobody
So-
drags their anchor over your undersea cables.
But
Or
let me.
as long as-
Yeah.
Nobody
But-
detonates an explosive device on them like it happened a couple of months
Yeah,
ago.
I don't know what I'm talking. I just did.
Well, no, that's a real thing. If y'all haven't seen the undersea cable or telecommunications cables sabotage, it's a real thing. You don't see it on CNN and stuff like that, but it's a real thing. Wow. Okay. Didn't
But
want to bring that up.
the transmission issue is a big one, and the only reason why it has a chance of getting solved is because of the dollars that are willing to be thrown at it by big tech. So
We got to do away with cables. Cables won't work. We can't do that.
I mean,
Sorry,
you
the
gotta
cables
come
don't
up
work.
with
I mean, they
better
work
ways.
brilliantly.
you
Go
can either transmit your power to the load, or you can bring the load to power, or you can bring the gen to the load. Choose your route. So
The
right
data
now
can
they're-
be transmitted in different ways.
yes, there are some needs for how fast and the latency speed on that. But yes.
Interesting.
All right, I'm gonna wrap it up there, just with the thought of, if you're looking for real estate investments, you don't look. You're not gonna go out. If you're wanting to go out and buy 5,000 acres, let me know. But that's not necessarily the need. The need is for where are you investing and finding the locations.
And where are the jobs going in coordination with it?
Yep.
And Austin is one of the ones that is globally up and coming. Dallas
Yep.
Fort Worth is one of the global hubs. Like if you had to list off on one hand where the global hubs are, Virginia's one and Dallas, Texas is one.
And by the way,
But
this is a link that I popped in there, and it was just like, this is a real estate. It's called therealdeal.com. This is a real estate investment website, and I just wanted to put this in there for the headlines. Verizon, huge renewal for data center at 60 Hudson in New York City. Core Scientific convert Bitcoin mining to a data center. DataBank lands a $2 billion deal from global investors. Look at the locations: Dallas, Chicago, Dallas, San Antonio, Chicago. Yeah, Houston is as well. I've seen that in other locations. Guys, Texas is ripe for this type of investment. There are other locations. Ryan mentioned Louisiana, Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York. They're trying to reactivate 3 Mile Island for this exact reason.
Suddenly your coal plants are being converted to natural gas. So all of your baseline grid power is getting cleaner as well as a function of it.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
Nice.
Any final thoughts, guys?
Huh?
Central Texas is a great place to be for real estate.
Yeah, man, the triangle. Ooh.
That's and guys, that's coming from somebody that's not in real estate. That's coming from somebody that is in the sector. I don't know what to tell you.
Energy sector. We can just say that, I suppose. Yeah.
Given there's a holy crap, there's a lot of money to be made in the future. Ryan, thank you, sir.
Thank y'all.
Your
Thank you.
your expertise is pretty amazing. Steve?
Hope I could help.
Fun. It was fun tonight.
And by the way, if y'all want Ryan back on, throw questions in the comments, and if he can get away from daddy duty, we'll have him back on in the future to answer questions.
That's right.
See you next week, guys.
Hey, thanks so much, guys.